In the noisy city, with skyscrapers and rows of gleaming luxury cars, there was one name everyone knew: Richard Lawson. People called him the Diamond Hand because every project he touched, from oil and real estate to shipping, turned into gold. Business magazines wrote about him as a symbol of success. But behind the tall gates of the mansion on Banana Island, it was not contracts that kept him up at night. It was another kind of pain. That pain had a name: Amanda Lawson. She was his only daughter, whom he loved even more than his career. In the past, when Amanda was 8, she used to run all over the garden as big as a park, laughing brightly, chasing golden butterflies, pulling her mother by the hand everywhere, and forcing her father to stop meetings just to listen to her talk about school. Her laughter used to be the warmest sound in that cold, spacious house. Then, one rainy evening, on the way to a friend's birthday party, their car lost control. The accident took the life of his wife, Elena Lawson, the gentlewoman who always reminded him that family is the greatest asset. Amanda survived, but her legs would never move the way they used to. From a little girl who loved to dance, she was now bound to a small wheelchair. The doctor said, "The chance of recovery is very low, but we'll do our best." Richard refused to accept the words, "very low." He used the thing he was best at: money. He took his daughter to Singapore for surgery, to Germany for rehabilitation, and then to the United States to try new therapies. Professors, specialists, and physical therapists came in one after another. But each flight home was another time hope was worn down. Amanda's legs remained motionless. The light in her eyes slowly faded. She no longer asked to go out to the garden. She just sat by the window, staring into the distance, as if her soul had left the house long ago. Richard stayed busy with numbers, meetings, and deals. But the more contracts he signed, the more he felt that his home lacked something money could never buy: his daughter's laughter. He hired more nannies, more tutors, and even invited children's dance performers to put on shows in the yard. Amanda would politely smile for a few seconds, then fall back into silence. She hardly spoke to anyone except her caregiver, Grace, who quietly pushed her wheelchair into the garden every afternoon so she could get some fresh air. Until one hot noon, when the mansion was so quiet you could hear the ticking of the clock. Something no one expected happened. Outside the high fence covered in vines, a skinny, barefoot boy was feeling his way along the road. His name was Cola. No one knew his last name, nor did anyone remember when he first appeared at the nearby market. People only knew that his parents had died long ago, and that Cola survived day to day on a few coins he begged for at the bus park, at intersections, and on the funny dances that made people feel both pity and amusement. When he was too hungry, stomach growling, Cola danced. When drivers yelled at him for standing too close to their cars, Cola also danced. When he was sad, when he was cold, when night came and he still had nowhere to sleep, he danced again, partly to ask for a little money, partly to forget that he owned nothing more than a torn t-shirt and an oversized pair of shorts. For Cola, dancing was his last suit of armor, his way of reminding himself, "I'm still alive." That day, as he walked past the gate of the Lawson mansion, Cola instinctively pressed his eye against a small gap in the hedge. He saw a girl sitting in a wheelchair, her face turned toward the flower-filled garden, but her eyes strangely sad. She didn't move, just hugged a worn-out pillow in her lap. In that moment, Cola saw something very familiar in her eyes: the emptiness he often saw in his own reflection in the bus window. "Maybe I can do something," he thought. "At least I can try to see if I can make her laugh." Cola looked around. Seeing no one, he squeezed through a gap near a hibiscus bush and slipped quietly inside. The grass under his feet was cool. He stood a short distance from Amanda, not daring to come too close for fear of scaring her. Then, Without a word, he began to dance. It wasn't a polished routine like the ones on television. Kola swung his arms too wide, took exaggeratedly big steps, deliberately slipped and fell, then bounced back up like a clown in a circus. He made silly faces, widened his eyes, pretended to trip over an invisible rock, and rolled once across the grass. Everything was clumsy, but so sincere that it became funny. Amanda blinked. For a moment, she couldn't believe her eyes. Since when had a strange boy been dancing in this garden, where only serious adults usually walked back and forth? The corners of her mouth trembled. A tiny little giggle escaped before she could cover it up. Kola heard it. He paused for half a second, then, as if he had been given new strength, he danced even harder, tumbling, spinning, making car horn sounds, and imitating the shrill voice of the fish seller at the market. Amanda couldn't hold back anymore. Laughter burst out of her like a spring breaking free, echoing throughout the garden. She clapped her hands, tears welling up because she was both laughing and amazed at herself. Inside the house, Richard lifted his head. He thought he had misheard. What was that sound? It was clearly a child's laughter, the very sound he had dreamed of so many times in his restless sleep. He almost ran out to the balcony. In the yard below, he saw his daughter, her back straighter than usual, her hands raised and clapping loudly, laughing uncontrollably. In front of her was a dirty barefoot boy in torn clothes, spinning around like a top. The strange scene left Richard speechless. The first instinct of a wealthy father was anger. Who is that boy? How did security let him in? In his mind, a series of worst-case scenarios flashed by. Thief, spy, kidnapper. He almost shouted for the guards. But then he looked more closely. Amanda's face was flushed from laughing too much. Her once dull, sad eyes were now sparkling. Her chest rose and fell, and the hands that usually hung limp along the sides of the wheelchair were now moving with a rhythm. And, if you looked very closely, her small legs seemed to be trembling just a little. The shout got stuck in his throat. Instead, Richard stood hidden behind a pillar, quietly watching. In his heart, a feeling that had been absent for far too long began to stir. Hope. The next afternoon, Kola came again. This time, Amanda was already waiting. She sat closer to the garden gate, her eyes constantly looking toward the road. When the thin figure of the boy appeared, she burst out laughing, even before he had done anything. But that day was not like the day before. Just as he slipped through the hedge, Kola saw a tall man in a white shirt standing there. The man didn't shout or throw anything, but his cold, sharp gaze made Kola instinctively want to step back. From his street experience, Kola knew, whenever an adult frowned like that, what often came next was a slap or, at least the words, "Get out of here." He clenched his fists, ready to turn and run. "Daddy!" Amanda's voice rang out behind him. "Don't send him away. I've been waiting for him all day." Rich turned to look at his daughter. In her eyes, there was no longer the indifference he had grown used to, but pleading. He sighed and looked back at the boy. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice already less cold. My name is Kola, sir," the boy stammered. "I just saw her looking sad, so I wanted to dance to make her laugh. I didn't take anything. I'll just dance, and then I'll go." Richard was silent. He looked from the messy hair, the torn t-shirt, the bare feet caked with dirt, to the deep, dark eyes that held both caution and determination. Then he turned to his daughter. Amanda was gripping the armrest of her chair, her eyes full of expectation, as if her future depended on her father's answer. "All right," Richard said slowly. "Today you can stay, but only in the garden where I can see you. Don't go into the house, don't touch anything. When you're done, go to the kitchen, have a meal, and then you can leave. Understood. Kohler couldn't believe his ears. He was allowed to stay. And even to eat? He nodded quickly. Yes, sir, I understand. I'll just dance. Richard stepped back and sat down on a stone bench a few meters away. Kohler turned to Amanda and raised his arms like an acrobat, about to step onto a grand stage. Ready? He asked. The girl grinned. I'm always ready. And so the garden on Banana Island officially became the private stage of two children. Day after day, at exactly 4 p.m, the security guard would open the small side gate. The family's longtime driver watched the scene and shook his head slightly, half surprised, half amused. That kid really has magic, he whispered. But Kohler's magic was not tricks or spells. It was the magic of laughter, of sincerity, and of a heart that, though scarred, still chose to love. He told Amanda stories about quarrels at the bus park, about being chased away, yet returning because that spot has more people, easier to earn money. He imitated the voices of drivers, market women, and traffic officers. Every time, Amanda would clutch her belly, her shoulders shaking with laughter. Those small tremors were the most natural physical therapy. No machines, no complicated treatment plans, her body simply began to wake up again. Fingers, wrists, shoulders, and gradually her back and hips. Some days, Kohler would lie on the grass with his legs in the air, pedaling as if riding a bicycle. Amanda would grip the sides of her chair, trying to lift her hips to copy the move. Aunt Grace watched from a distance, trembling with emotion. Richard quietly filmed every moment on his phone. At a follow-up appointment, the doctor looked over the numbers. He frowned, then smiled. Strange. Her mood has changed a lot. She's more positive and responds better to the exercises. Sometimes, all it takes is one reason to want to live, and the body will find its own way. Richard said nothing about Kohler. He only nodded, but inside he knew very clearly. His daughter's reason to live was a homeless boy. That night, he walked alone into the yard, where the grass still held traces of dancing feet. He lifted his face to the starry sky and whispered, "Thank you, Kohler." But Kohler didn't just bring laughter and then leave. He also carried with him invisible scars of his own. One evening, it suddenly poured with rain, yet Kohler still tried to reach the mansion. He was soaked, mud up to his ankles. Grace gasped. "Goodness, why didn't you stay somewhere dry?" Kohler just smiled. "I promised Amanda I'd come. If I don't, she'll be sad again." Richard watched this, feeling a sharp ache in his chest. This boy whom society called street trash kept his promises better than many adults in his high-level meetings. "Go inside and take a shower before you go to the garden," Richard said. Kohler froze. I'm allowed to go inside." "Yes," Richard nodded. "The bathroom doesn't know the difference between rich and poor." From that day on, Kohler was no longer just the boy who dances in the yard. He was allowed to bathe, given clean clothes that Richard bought for him, and ate with everyone in the kitchen. At first, he sat on the edge of the table, eating slowly as if afraid that eating too fast would get him scolded. After a few meals, with Amanda stubbornly pulling out the chair beside her, he moved closer, sharing braised meat and bowls of soup. Children's laughter began to fill the dining room that had once been used mainly for lavish business parties. Of course, not everyone in the house accepted this right away. Some maids whispered, "What if that street boy's hands are used to stealing?" A security manager suggested tightening inspections. Richard listened to them all. Then he replied calmly, "We lock all the valuables in the safe, yet we entrust my daughter to this boy for 2 hours a day. If I didn't trust him, I would never do that. Look at his heart, not at his clothes." Those words silenced the whole house. They started to pay more attention. And just as Richard had said, Cola never touched anything that wasn't his. Whenever someone dropped a spoon or a napkin, he picked it up and handed it back, always saying, "Sorry, sir," or "Sorry, ma'am." In the kitchen, he volunteered to help wash dishes and wipe tables. No one taught him, but he understood that if he wanted to stay near Amanda, he had to ease everyone's worries. One evening, after the family had finished dinner, Richard decided to sit down beside Cola on the back steps. "Where do you sleep when you're not here?" he asked. Cola was silent for a long moment. He looked down at his feet, which were less calloused now thanks to the new sandals he had worn for a few weeks. "I used to sleep under the bridge near the bus park. Before that, in a corner of the market. Some nights we were chased away, and we had to stay awake until morning. Whenever I was too tired, I danced so I wouldn't think about my empty stomach." Richard swallowed the lump in his throat. "And your parents?" Cola shrugged, trying to smile as if it were nothing. "I don't remember their faces. I only remember that when I was little, there was a woman who called me my little butterball. After that, all I remember is the bus park." No contract on his desk had ever shaken Richard like those simple words. Looking at the boy sitting next to him, he suddenly felt all the deals he had once been so proud of become very small. There are things in this world money can never measure, like the way an orphaned child still keeps his smile. The way he spins on the grass just to make a strange girl laugh. "Listen, Cola," Richard said, after a long silence. "From today, if you agree, you don't have to sleep under the bridge anymore. This house has many empty rooms. I want one of them to be yours." Cola turned, thinking he had misheard. "You want me to stay?" "Not for one night," Richard said slowly. "For a long time. I want you to go to school. I want you to have a future beyond the bus park." Cola's voice trembled. "But all I know is how to dance. I can't read. I don't know how to be a proper person." Richard laughed, not a mocking laugh, but a rare gentle one. "I was once a country boy before I learned to read numbers. Whether a person is proper or not doesn't depend on their clothes, son. It depends on how they treat others. In that sense, you're already more noble than many people I meet out there." That night, for the first time, Cola slept in a real bed. The mattress was soft, the blanket warm, and the roof didn't rattle in the rain. Lying on his back, staring at the ceiling, he felt as if he were flying. In the heart of the 12-year-old boy, the idea of home finally had shape, sound, and scent. The story of the boy Cola dancing in billionaire Richard Lawson's mansion started to spread across the neighborhood and then the entire city. Some people clicked their tongues. "Lawson is so rich he has nothing better to do than charity." Others scoffed. "Bringing a street kid into the house. What if he steals something? It'll ruin his businessman image." But there were also those who quietly smiled. "Who knows? Maybe thanks to that boy, his daughter will walk again." Behind the gates, the Lawson family didn't care much. They were busy living their own story. Amanda kept practicing. Some days, she fell out of her chair while trying to stand, giving the family a fright. But she herself was the one who laughed the loudest. "It hurts a little, but Daddy, I can feel my legs." Cola was always by her side. Every step forward she took became a new dance of his. When she pulled her leg forward, he did a moonwalk, step backward. When she managed to stand steady for 5 seconds, he spun around 5 times. His playful tricks made every training session end in laughter instead of tears. One morning, the physical therapist came to the house. He asked Amanda to try standing with the newly installed parallel bars. The whole family held their breath. Cola stood nearby, not touching her so she could do it on her own. Amanda set her feet down and slowly shifted her weight. Sweat dotted her forehead. Her lips were pressed tight. Then, very slowly, She stood up. Not for 1 second, not for 3 seconds like before, but 10, then 15. The doctor was the first to cry. He took off his glasses and quickly wiped his tears. This is a turning point. She's coming back. Her mental motivation is incredibly strong. Richard turned away to hide the tears in his eyes. He saw Kohler standing there, mouth open, fists clenched. In that moment, he realized that this boy hadn't just helped his daughter recover. He had given Richard himself the chance to truly become a father again. A few months later, Richard completed the paperwork. Kohler officially became part of the Lawson family, not just the dancing boy, but Amanda's brother. Public opinion was divided at first, but gradually, as they saw Amanda walking better and smiling brighter, people began to admire them. The Lawson house, once as cold as a luxury hotel, had become a real home. Every morning, Amanda called, "Kohler, wake up, we still have walking practice." Every afternoon, the garden rang with music, footsteps, and laughter. Richard no longer stared only at stock charts. He spent time sitting on the stone bench watching his daughter and his new son laugh together. He realized, my real wealth isn't the buildings or the numbers in my accounts. My real wealth is Amanda's laughter, Kohler's courage, and the love that binds us together. If this story has touched your heart, give the video a like. Subscribe to African Elders Tales and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because sometimes, the healing we truly need doesn't come from money or medicine, but from love, kindness, and an unexpected friendship. See you again in the next video, with more emotional, dramatic, and hope-filled stories.